South Korea and the U.S. agree on a 15% tariff for South Korean products entering the American market. We have details up next. Hello, welcome to Press Perspective. It's August 1st here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Country-specific U.S. tariffs on all imports into its market are going into effect on August 7th, according to an order signed by the U.S. leader on Thursday. For more on America's import duties on its friends and foes alike, I have freelance journalist Raphael Rashid here in the studio. Raphael, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Professor Oh Joon-seok at Sookymyung Women's University live on the line with the pundit take. Professor Oh, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Good evening, Sunny.
Right, we will start here in the studio. Raphael, let's begin with details of the trade deal sealed between South Korea and the U.S.
Yeah, the core of this agreement, I think, is relatively straightforward. The United States has reduced its planned tariff on South Korean goods from 25% down to 15%, putting Korea on an equal footing with the likes of Japan and the European Union, who also secured similar deals. In exchange, South Korea has committed to a massive $350 billion investment package in the U.S. with a significant focus on revitalizing America's shipbuilding industry, what's being dubbed the Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, or MASGA project. This includes building new shipyards, training workers, and strengthening the supply chains. And beyond shipbuilding, the investments will target semiconductors, nuclear energy, biotechnology sectors. And South Korea, as well, has agreed to purchase $100 billion worth of American energy products, namely liquefied natural gas. I guess crucially for the domestic sector, Seoul managed to escape or avoid opening sensitive rice and beef industries. Those markets are very sensitive here, as you know, and something that was a major worry for activists, civic groups, and farmers alike. So I think, of course, the timing is significant, and the tariffs, as you said, in the lead, would take effect on August 7th. And the final details of this whole package or deal will be announced or hammered out during the upcoming summit, which I guess has been announced, these bilateral talks between President Trump and Sookymyung, who has been invited to the White House, who is expected to go over the next 2 weeks there. So I guess we will see more drama and more handshakes, potentially, more drama to come in the next 2 weeks.
Right, within the next 14 days, as you said. In the meantime, Professor Oh, what is your assessment of the trade deal between South Korea and the U.S.?
It's just a close call, avoiding the worst case scenario. As I could understand how much hard it may be on the negotiation table, they felt like a grenade game. But I have to say it left something to be decided. The tariff rate is set at 15%, not exist before, down from the previously announced plan to impose 25%. In addition, as Mr. Rashid said, there is a string. Korea is committed to invest $350 billion worth of money in the U.S., including creating a $150 billion shipbuilding fund. No doubt, Korean economy cannot afford to be the giving tree. It matters because the weight of trade amount out of total GDP in Korea is over 85%. The top two main items of Korean exports are chips and cars. Check out chips first. Successfully found the tangent point of mutual interest. Although the U.S. has yet to announce a specific figure for tariff rate, but Korean chip makers expressed cautious optimism that ensures they will not be treated less favorably than other countries, effectively ensuring MFN, most favored nation status. Korean chips, especially advanced memory and foundry products, are difficult to replace and so critical to U.S. tech firms' ambition in AI and high-performance computing. Next, move to talk about cars. there remains something to be decided. The older tariff was also set at 15%. In spite, we push it 12.5%. Instead, what we get is rice and beef market will not be further opened. Because of course FTA, the binding confirmation of international treaty between the two governments, 0% of tariff for cars has been applied up till now, while 2.5% tariff was levied on car imports from Japan and the EU. In return, Korean companies pay the price already by making FDI to transfer the central business and operate the supply chain of car industry in the United States. Besides, it is unclear whether the cost of potential tariff would fall on our customer through price increase. In this respect, I suppose 12.5% tariff should be attained based on mutual trust between the two governments.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, staying with deals, but moving beyond the tariff deals, Samsung Electronics recently inked an AI chip deal with Tesla. Raphael, could you tell us a bit more about this particular deal?
Yeah, so Samsung have secured what is being said to be the largest single customer contract in its history, a $16.5 billion deal to produce Tesla's next generation AI chips over the next 8 years. And so this isn't just any chip order. These are Tesla's custom designed AI 6 chips, which will power the company's full self-driving technology, humanoid robots, and potentially even its data centers in the future. The production will take place at Samsung's new plant in Texas, which has been under construction since the year 2022, but hasn't really secured many clients up to date. So, of course, this is very significant for Samsung. And these chips will use Samsung's latest technology and will represent some of the most advanced semiconductor manufacturing available today. So I think it's quite a big win. Elon Musk has been quite vocal about this partnership, confirming the deal on social media as he would. And he said that this $16.5 billion figure is just the bare minimum, suggesting the actual contract value might be a lot higher. I guess time will tell. He even promised to walk the line personally to accelerate the pace of progress. Not too sure what that means, but he did note that he lived conveniently close. Apparently he lives very close to it, so maybe he'll be popping in from time to time. Again, of course, this comes at a time of the trade negotiations with the US, and also we had Samsung chairman Lee Jae-yong, who basically traveled to Washington this week as well. And so we had this chip deal announcement just as Korean officials were finalizing the trade tariff negotiations and agreements. Samsung shares, on the other hand, responded positively. So they jumped to the 70,000 won mark for the first time in 10 months. And I think it went slightly up a bit for a few days, maybe 2 or 3 days before going back down. And I guess the final word is that the chips are expected to enter production in 2027.
Right. And Professor, again, what do you suppose are the broader implications of this business deal for Samsung, especially keeping in mind that just yesterday Samsung reported operating profits, a big plunge of 55% in the second quarter on year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more than anything else, I agree with Mr. Rashid. Elon Musk confirmed the deal saying Tesla had selected Samsung to produce its next generation AI 6 chips. This 8-year contract is the biggest deal that Samsung chip business has won from a single customer. And the agreement marks a strategic success for Samsung, whose memory chip business has struggled to produce advanced memory chips for use in AI systems. This order will be very meaningful as Samsung's Taylor factory so far had almost zero customers, though the deal may represent a small portion of its logic chips revenue annually. The custom chip, as Mr. Rashid mentioned, will be used to power Tesla's autonomous driving and humanoid robot technologies. It could also be used in data center to power Tesla's video-based AI model training program. Tesla comes to reduce its reliance on general-purpose graphics processing unit produced by NVIDIA and AMD. Analysts said that the agreement could bolster the company's contract manufacturing business, but Samsung faces challenges in securing additional large customers, both for logic chips and memory chips, where it struggles against TSMC and SK Hynix. This new deal breathed some much-needed life into business and may signal the start of next generation of business, turning point for Samsung. It may be a good example of global partnership.
Right. Moving forward, Raphael, the International Monetary Fund, it recently raised its growth projection for the global economy this year. Do tell us a bit more about this new projection and what are the respective outlooks for individual countries, including, of course, South Korea?
Sure. I've got a few numbers for you. So the IMF has revised its global growth forecast upward to 3.0% for this year and 3.1% for 2026, both increases from the April projections of 2.8% and 3.0% respectively. So the fund credits the upgrade to what it calls a fragile easing in trade tensions and business front-loading imports ahead of the tariff deadlines. If we look at the details, the picture varies significantly from country to country, and China in particular received the largest upgrade. With growth now projected at 4.8% this year compared to the previously projected 4.0% forecast. So it's a substantial 0.8 percentage point jump. The US also saw modest improvements with projections of 1.9% for 2025 and 2.0% for 2026. However, if we look at South Korea, South Korea stands out as moving a little bit in the opposite direction. The IMF has actually cut Korea's 2025 growth forecast to just 0.8%. That's down 0.2 percentage points from the April's 1.0% projection. So that would make it one of the weakest performers among advanced economies this year. The 2026 outlook is maybe a little bit more optimistic at 1.8%, representing 0.4 percentage point upgrade from the previous 1.4% forecast. And I guess if we look at the overall picture for advanced economies as a group, the IMF projects 1.5% growth and 1.6% for next year. If we look at the emerging markets and developing markets, those economies together are expected to fare far better at 4.1% this year and 4.0% next year. So I think those are significant numbers for the developing and emerging markets. And finally, the IMF notes that while global inflation is expected to continue declining to 4.2% this year and 3.6% in 2026, risks, of course, remain tilted downwards, particularly around the trade policy developments that we are seeing coming out in the next few days, weeks or months.
Right. Professor, as Raphael has said, the growth outlook for the global economy has been raised to 3% for this year, but the forecast for South Korea has been lowered even further from back in April, of course, to 0.8% now. Should we be worried?
Oh, sure. Of course, we should take it seriously. The export-driven Korean economy has been hit, signs of deceleration amid growing domestic and external uncertainty. Domestic demand has yet to show meaningful recovery as political instability continues to weigh on consumer sentiment. Growth in private consumption has slowed, particularly in service sectors such as accommodation and food services. Meanwhile, the downward pressure from high interest rate and then sluggish construction orders suggest that the weakness in domestic demand may moderate over time with a lag. From the view of economic fundamentals, external soundness has been robust, supported by a sustained large current account surplus and net foreign asset, which amounts to nearly 60% of GDP. However, export conditions have deteriorated sharply as the U.S. tariff were raised on a wide range of products, and therefore, trade-related uncertainty has risen to unprecedented level. Despite robust semiconductor exports until recently, overall exports have weakened amid sluggishness in other sectors, and conditions are expected to deteriorate further following the U.S. tariff hikes. In light of these domestic and external circumstances, the Korean economy is projected to face a lower growth than expected before. Given the ongoing economic slowdown, accommodative macroeconomic policy would be appropriate at this time. And at the same time, considering the continued decline in Korea's potential growth trajectory, it is essentially good timing for policymakers to maintain a structural reformation of industry to enhance the economic efficiency at this time.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Raphael, we have some time left, so let's revisit the topic of tariffs. What's the latest with regard to U.S. tariff talks with its other trade partners?
Yeah, so Trump has essentially completed his global tariff reset, signing executive orders that set new rates for 68 countries plus the EU. The picture across the world, I guess, is quite a mixed one, with tariffs ranging from 10% baseline for countries with trade surpluses with the US, up to 41% for Syria, 40% for countries like Myanmar and Laos. Making headlines today is Canada. Canada has been particularly hard hit. Trump has increased their tariffs from 25% to 35%, citing the failure to cooperate on the fentanyl flows, the drugs coming in apparently, and the recent decision by Canada to recognize Palestinian statehood. By contrast, we have the likes of Mexico that have managed to secure a 90-day extension at their current 25% rate. And then, of course, a few days ago, we saw the EU that struck a deal at 15% after intense negotiations at Trump's Scottish golf resort, as you do. This averted the threatened 30% rate, though it still, of course, represents a significant increase from what it was before. And the EU has itself committed to purchasing $750 billion in American energy over 3 years and investing some $600 billion in the US. Some countries did face higher rates. So we have India at 25%, Taiwan at 20%, Switzerland at 39%, actually, very, very high for Switzerland. And some of the, I guess, world's poorest nations weren't spared. If we look at, say, at Iraq at 35%, Libya 30%, Bangladesh 20%. So, like I said, it's a very mixed picture across the board, and these new rates, as we've said once, twice, will take effect on August 7th. But Trump has made it clear that these countries can still negotiate, apparently, even after these tariffs take place. He did tell NBC News, it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't come along in 4 weeks and say we can make some kind of a deal. So I think the door might or might not still be open, but for now, these are apparently pressing ahead next week. Although with Trump, I guess nothing is nothing can be confirmed until it actually happens.
Right, right. Next week, the tariffs go into effect. That's next Thursday, August 7th. Professor, findings released today show that Korean exports, they expanded for the second month in a row in July, rising almost 6% on year. That being said, how do U.S. tariffs look to affect South Korea's exports in the months ahead?
Korea may face the double whammy in the second half, decline domestic consumption inside and trade uncertainty outside. According to Kita Research, exports in automobile and steel sector could record a decline of 7.1% and 7.2% drop respectively in the July-December period, while auto parts and machinery industries could also see the drop of 6.5% and 3.8% respectively due to U.S. tariff. Korea's exports have risen for the second straight month in July, beating market expectation on strong chip demand and shipment being moved forward ahead of higher tariffs. A potential slowdown in export is feared to weigh further on the domestic economy amid sluggish consumption. BOK reported in the second quarter the country's real GDP rose 0.6%, rebounding from the unexpected 0.2% contraction in the first quarter. Companies are scrambling to assess the impact of new agreement amid the growing concern whether or not the trade advantage Korea had secured on the Chorus FTA may effectively be nullified, particularly in the automotive sector. What's left for Korea to find a new market opportunity? Korea needs to diversify its export destination toward the EU, the Asian region, and India, among other regions. Moreover, Korea accelerated its transition to innovative supply chain of high-tech industries, including artificial intelligence chips and electronic vehicles, by joining the regional integration, such as a CPTPP or multilateral FTA among China, Japan, and Korea.
Right, so it does need to diversify its market. That is talking about South Korea, of course. Meanwhile, Raphael, there are quite a number of pundits who claim that the tariff deal recently sealed between the US and the EU would simply serve to benefit the UK. Could you give us some context?
Yeah, the logic here, I guess, is quite straightforward. The UK negotiated a 10% baseline tariff on its exports to America, while the EU ended up with the 15% on most of their goods. So that's a 5% point difference that suddenly, seemingly makes British products more competitive to the American market. So from a US consumer or business perspective, UK goods are now apparently relatively cheaper compared to exactly the same product were it to come from the EU. But the potential, I guess, it goes beyond just price competitiveness. Some experts suggest that EU manufacturers might actually consider relocating production to the UK to access the lower tariff rate, especially since Brexit has essentially left the UK or Britain with spare manufacturing capacity. So, I mean, I guess that's one way of seeing things, but I think the benefits aren't necessarily guaranteed to materialize overnight if they exist at all. And this 5% difference, while I mean, it will take a long time for it to materialize, I think, because there's a whole array of things, you know, maybe existing contracts and supply chains. So I don't think this will take place overnight if that were really the case. And many businesses have long-term arrangements, so I don't think things will change overnight. But of course, on paper, it does look more competitive to do business with the UK compared to the EU.
Right, on paper, especially given the tariff rates then. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time. Raphael, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Professor Oh, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and do join us again, same time, next Monday.